Okay, I can't believe I did that. It's really, I still can't believe I did that. And what it was is, from the time I can remember, I was always in charge of younger kids because I'm the oldest one of three. I hated that. I actually hated my sister and my brother, but I hated my mother more because she made me do that. So I hated that part. I didn't like playing with other kids because I had to be in charge. So I grew up hating kids, and I said, if I ever get cursed with having children, that would be the worst thing in the world. Of course, what happened is that I got pregnant in my wedding night with my first one. And I thought, oh God, this is terrible. And I was doing everything to not make this go all the way, right? But there she is. She's going to be 50 this year. So then came number two, about 2 years later. And I thought, again, oh no, not again. Then I got, about 7 years, I got the pill. And I was happy. And then my doctor said, the last refill, he said, is there any diabetes in your family? I said, oh yeah. He said, no more pills. Got pregnant again. That month. And I said, this is hateful. This is really hateful. So there I had two, 7 years and nothing. And this child, sweet child, I was her pal. I was her everything. And I felt like, why? So I adopted number four. That was good because they had playmates. You know, it was fine. I love kids from the time when they are 5 and older. Under 5, don't bring him to me. It's not a good thing. So I got divorced because I was married to Mr. Present but not participating, so that didn't work. I married someone else who was a walking drunk with 4 more kids. So for a while I was the good mother of 8 who never wanted any. And then that fell apart. And then I found a young man, or actually he found me, 12 years younger than I was. And I thought, no, this can't be. And I asked him one day, I said, why do you carry so much life insurance? And he said, well, I want to have a family one day. And I said, I'm willing to try. To this day, I have no clue who opened my mouth. That was all it took. Right then, he said, we're going to get married. And I thought, he's just 9 years older than my oldest child. This is terrible. This is never going to work. But, you know, you can't unsay what you said. So we got married. And from the time, I think I got married when I was almost 52. And, yeah, he was 39. But then from 52 until 57, we scraped together every penny we could find to get me pregnant. And I mean, I knew it was difficult because not only was I past menopause or right in there, because I used to tell him, there will be days in the month where I would suggest you don't come home. Or if I say it's not good staying at home today, go somewhere else, has nothing to do with you. They actually were. And he said, okay, I'm fine with that. So we were through that. But then we found out health insurance does not pay for in vitro after 46. Well, 52 is a little more than 46, right? So then we thought, okay, we'll adopt. And then they said, no, you're too old. Finally, I think I was 56. We found a clinic. And the doctor came in and he said, you're too old. And I was incensed because, I mean, I was working hard to satisfy this man's wishes, right? That because my mouth opened. I can't believe I did that, you know? So I said, so you're punishing this man for having an older wife, right? And he said, okay, let me see. Maybe my associate will help. So the associate came in and my husband said to me, he said, you know, we should have lied about on the application. And the doctor looked at me, he said, yeah, you should have. And there again, I was stuck. And so he gave us this laundry list of all the things that were supposed to discourage us from going forward. But we did. And I tell you, I admire everybody who goes through in vitro because for about 1 month, my body was a blueberry muffin. And we did that 4 times. 3 times we got the news of, it didn't work. And then $15,000 later, it didn't work. Another $15,000 later, it didn't work. And then $15,000 more dollars, and we went on a trip. And on the trip, I said, I feel pregnant. And he said, oh, no, don't say it, don't say it. We don't have the proof. Well, I went to Walmart and got the stick. I was pregnant, but he wasn't going to tell anybody. So they said, we have to do a test. Now, we were on our way from Los Angeles to Atlanta. So they said, we have to redo the test to make sure. So they set up a test in Oklahoma City. I did the test. Of course, you don't know the results. Then we were in Atlanta. On a Friday night, they called me. I mean, Friday night Atlanta time is Friday afternoon in LA, right? They said, we have to redo the test again. I said, yeah, set it up for Oklahoma City again. So I went there. So all this time, I have been always thinking, maybe it's not going to work. Well, on the way home in Gallup, New Mexico, we got the news that I was pregnant. So at 59 and 4 months, I gave birth to twin girls. My girls are now 11 years old. I still can't believe I did that.
Okay. All right, all those of you that have been in a smokestack before, raise your hands. 2. All right. Well, the last place that I worked for as an electric sign repairman, we took care of maintenance on the aircraft warning lights on 800-foot smokestacks in Monroe, Michigan, Edison plant. So I kind of want to give you an idea of what that entails. The big concrete tapered cylinder that you see is not actually carrying the gas out of the stack. There's an inner core that is made out of steel, and there's a big airspace between these two. The base of these stacks was 80 feet in diameter. The outlet at the top was 30 feet in diameter. The metal boiler exhaust comes in from each side, goes into a T, into this 30-foot diameter steel pipe, and goes up the stack. Every 200 feet, there's a warning light on the outside of the stack on different sides. And basically, up until later, we had to climb the whole thing. So you would climb up the wall of this cement cylinder. The ladder is bolted to the wall. If you can picture the pyramid and the ladder here, as you climb, you are being pulled away from the wall. So you're not only holding your weight going up, but you're keeping your weight from being pulled off of the ladder. The ladder rungs are about 3/4 of an inch in diameter. They're not like your household ladder. They're steel rod welded into these things. So it's a very small grip. Up the center of the ladder is a small railroad track. And you wear a belt, and on the belt is a little cam mechanism that allows you to go up. And if you can picture your knuckle against a rail, it lets you go up, but if you start to go down, it locks you in. The only way you can go down is to hold that cam off of the rail, which is what you do when you descend. So the idea being that if you pass out or something, you know, you're going to be caught. Every 50 feet, the ladders are offset. So if you did fall, you're only going to fall that distance to a small platform made out of steel mesh, which is going to kill you anyhow. But and then going parallel with that ladder are safety lights. It's very dark in here. You drive your truck into the bottom of the stack. These large T-sections coming in at about 150-foot level. You drive in, you have one man on the bottom on the switches, and then 2 men climb. So as you go up, you stop at each level, you check the lights, see which ones need to be relamped. There are these called xenon, high intensity warning lights. That central metal core is completely wrapped in asbestos. You can imagine how much asbestos that is to wrap a 30-foot diameter tube. It's hot. There's asbestos in the air. You're wearing a hard hat, a particle mask, goggles, because there's sulfuric acid in the fly ash, and when it hits the water in your eyes, it turns back to sulfuric acid. You have a backpack on with materials. You have a full tool belt on. And you're going to pull your body 800 feet more than straight up. So it's pretty intense. When you get up to these decks, they're expanded steel. You can see through them. Although because the only lights are the ones that follow the ladder, you really don't see much of anything except this tapering of lights into the abyss below you. If you drop a light bulb, you never hear it hit. It just kind of, and that's scary because you're in this darkness. So every 200 feet, there's these decks. By then, your arms were so pumped up from climbing and your legs, you needed the brake anyhow. So the lights came in on steel doors. So you didn't have to go on the outside of the cement cylinder. So you pull the lights in. When you get to the 800-foot level, the inner core is almost to the outer wall now because of the taper of the stack and the straight tube going up the middle. They come together near the top. When you get to 800 feet, you're actually, the very top of the stack is not quite as high as this is here. This is the last door with a light on it. It's dark. When you open the door, you go from total darkness to an 800-foot window this far away from you. You can't imagine the rush that is. You go back against the pipe and take a breath because it's just, whew. The coal freighters down below you are about that long that are unloading down there. I would get to the top of this and it wasn't quite high enough for me. I climbed the bolts in the wall to get out the cap. There's a steel cap over this that allows air to go up between the walls and vent it to the outside. I would open the light doors, figure out which way the wind was blowing, and then go to the opposite side and go up the manhole sheet metal cover that's around the edge of this 30-foot exhaust pipe. I can't tell you what that sound is like, but I think if you stuck your head in a locomotive, it'd be similar to that. The sound and the fury and the power of these huge generators exhausting out through these stacks is somewhat astounding. Well, one time, this was a maintenance contract with our company. We got like $1,400 a month to keep the lights burning on these stacks. Well, one time they sent me out with a helper and they said, the lights burn out. The safety lights that go up the ladder. At this time, they had installed what they call a crawler elevator in the stack, which is a gear-driven track up that concrete wall that two guys could stand next to each other with a toolbox. It would take you up to 530 feet until the walls got too close for the elevator. So we go into the stacks, no lights. We get in the crawler elevator. We go up 530 feet. You get out in the dark with flashlights. It's hard to describe the feeling because you know what you're in a shotgun barrel. And you have to change the first light at 530 feet. The lights are in what looks like a mason jar over a light bulb. They're safety lights. And there's a metal cage around that jar to keep it from breaking. The sulfuric ash in the stack corrodes the metal of the cage around it. So you need a strap wrench. If you know what a strap wrench is, with a leather belt, you need a strap wrench to undo this one light bulb, of which there are many in 800 feet. They go straight up. The ladders are offset. So when the ladder is offset from the one you need to get to, it was about that far away from the ladder, out in space, in the dark. And I would have my knee hooked over the ladder rung and out with both hands on a strap wrench, 530 feet in the air to start, trying to get the globes off of these lights in total darkness. And then worked our way to the top, and then worked our way to the bottom. And I can't believe I did that.
Okay, so I don't have any biological feats, and I don't have any high drama, but I do have my own little story. And my story takes place in Raleigh, North Carolina, 25 years ago. And I was about 22, and I had just quit graduate school, which was very painful and embarrassing, but also probably one of the smartest things I ever did, which was just realizing what I'm not cut out to do. And, but I was feeling kind of down, you know, kind of small, because I just realized there was something I couldn't really do. And, but thankfully I had applied to veterinary school, and I got into that, and I should be feeling great, right? You know, I got into vet school, I'm going there in the fall, except I'm terrified, just absolutely terrified. And, but you know, that's okay. I've got my vet assistant job. I'm going to do this. So I'm going to learn a lot this summer. I'm going to go in, I'm going to kick butt. Except I'm a really bad mountain biker. And so I go out and break my pelvis about 2 weeks into my job, and I have to quit because I can't lift anything because I'm broken. And I really feel broken at this point. And, but it's really not that bad. You know, I don't need surgery or anything. I just need to rest. So they said, just get off your feet for a couple of weeks. You'll be fine. Just chill out. So, okay, I'll be fine. What am I going to do for 2 weeks? I live by myself. I got nothing to do. I go to the video store. I rent 7 movies for $7 for 7 days. And it's the best thing ever. I'm like, oh, yes, introvert's dream. 2 weeks of a me party, right? And you go through this day after day after day, and eventually I am kind of getting bored and restless, and everything still hurts, but I can move around. I kind of need to do something besides be in my own head watching movies all day. So I got to get a job. What am I going to do? You know, I can't even stand for long periods of time. But I haul my movie pile with me back to the video store, and they're pretty familiar with me now. And I hand them the movies, and I look at the door, help wanted. Yes, I could do this. I could do this, right? And I could. You know, it's really pretty easy gig, right? I mean, I'm getting paid $4 an hour. Free movie rental from closing to the morning. I can watch whatever I want, bring it back. All I really have to do is come in, scan the box, check what's inside, make sure it's the right thing, make change, drink beer, and yeah, you didn't know that was a perk. Awesome job. Yeah, within like a week of working there, my boss was buying me beer and handed me a 6-pack as he was leaving, and giving me a McDonald's cup with a straw and saying, "Have a nice night." And you know, he gives me the keys to the shop, and I'm off and running. And you know, I started to feel like a real person again. And you know, again, it's not that exciting. Scan the box, check inside, make sure A Tale of Two Cities is not A Tale of Two Titties. And you know, mistakes can be made. What if someone took home raw meat 43 and they haven't watched 26 yet? You could get lost. So anyway, yeah, there was a pretty big back room, and most of our business was that. There was a lot in the front, but we really made the money on the back room. And that didn't faze me, you know, I wasn't too stressed out about that because the thing was is everybody was so cool. You know, the guys would come in, I'd scan the box, whatever, go out the door, sip a beer, best job of my life, okay? Except for the one guy. You know, there's always that one person who just really wants to crap on your day, and it's this guy. And he would come in and he was all highfalutin because he would buy his adult entertainment, but then he'd come back a week later and say, you know, this movie, it doesn't work. I want my money back. And I'm pretty non-confrontational. Like, I'm sorry, your movie didn't work, sir. You know, get the thing, put it away, give him his money back. I'm kind of a jerk, whatever, scan, box, beer, whatever. And he does it again. And now I'm kind of getting pissed off about the whole thing because I don't know if he's just doing this to me or if he's just kind of a jerk or what the deal is. But, you know, I give him his money and I take the movie back and go on with my day. But he tries it again. And now I'm 3 beers into my shift. And I've got my self-esteem back. And so I look at him and I said, you know, I think I need to check this out. So I grab the movie and I walk around the counter and he seems a little startled. And I start heading back to the back office because I'm going to look at this thing. I'm going to make sure it's really broken. But then I just get this wild hair and I turn around and I go, come on. And he does. He doesn't know what to do. So he starts following me. And we walk back through the back room, which now seems to stretch forever. You know, it's like you're just going past all the titles, you know. And we go back to the little back office, which is just a hellhole. Because it's got all the boxes of the adult movies that are on the shelves just everywhere, like over every square inch of the desk. And I popped the movie in. And I will say, as much as a jerk he was, he did rewind the movie. So I did put it in. It was the beginning. And if y'all who remember renting movies, you had previews, you know, so we went straight to the previews. And as you know, with previews, they kind of cut right to the climax. And so I sit there, and, you know, of course, this seems like forever, too, but it's probably like 10 seconds. But I sit there, and I don't even look at them. I just watch it, put it in, sit there. Finally, I just kind of turn around and go, everything looks fine to me. And, I mean, he couldn't get out of there fast enough. He was just, like, backing out. He just almost ran out of there, never saw him again, and I can't believe I did that.
Sarah, and I'm still here, and maybe that's where I'm gonna start and end. But all right, little backstory how I got here. So I got here like sort of settled 6 years ago, and shortly thereafter, when I was part of a we, the other part of the we, he decided he didn't want to be here anymore. So that left me here. I had choices. I could have stayed. I could have left, but I stayed because it's beautiful here. And I didn't really know what else to do. And I had goats and I had alpaca. Now, had I known that the other half of the we was going to like just take off, but it was okay, I maybe wouldn't have gotten into the alpaca. I still have 2. I started off with 2. That made 4 because they were bred. Then I had 6. And so that all happened. So I still have 2. So there was that. And I had to learn stuff. So you have to understand, I came from a place by the seacoast. And I had a life, and I'd raised children, and I had a job. And my idea of how I spent my days when I wasn't doing my work was going to Mid-Hour for lunch, going to browse TJ Maxx, going to Barnes and Nobles to browse the books. I mean, I had a very like kind of comfortable life, to the beach because we lived by the ocean and stuff. So here I am in a mountain. I had experience with mountains because I went to summer camp in New Hampshire and I knew I loved mountains. And I knew I didn't want to be on the ocean anymore because the cost of living was going like this. But then 2008 happened, everything went like that. And then, you know, we had to adjust to that. So finally we got on the roof, and that was like after. And then there was this, I don't know, it didn't make a good cultural adjustment. Sort of wanted to be with somebody else. But I was still here. So I had alpacas, I had goats, I had me, I had 2 dogs, not the same 2 dogs as I have now. I had chickens, and I had cats, and they just sort of morphed into many. So I had all these things I had to take care of. I had to learn stuff I never ever thought I would ever have to learn. So I needed to learn how to get this water. Well, I knew how to take water, but in the wintertime, you know, you have to like turn off the outside spigots because they will freeze. So you have to bucket the water. So I'm bucketing the water, right? Bucket, it's getting heavier and heavier. So I talked to my son. He says, Mom, get 2 buckets. You know, just carry some on each. So I did that. And I got him, and I had to, of course, make, you know, 4 trips, you know, to get everybody the water, but that was okay because I'm getting toned, right? I mean, look at me, I'm toned, right? So anyway, there was that. I had to learn about the hay. I had to find places to buy hay. Then I had to get the hay and store the hay. I had to pay for the hay. And then I had to learn how to like get the hay from here to there, you know, and from here to there. And make sure everybody had enough hay. I need the grain. Now, grain comes in 50-pound bags, all right? 50-pound bags. 50 pounds is a lot to carry. So I had to figure out how to do that. Well, first I was carrying them, you know, I was carrying them, heaving them, I was putting in buckets and stuff. And then I realized, no, I have to kind of sort of maybe split them or get the car closer to where I store it. So I dealt with all that, and that was good. And though the chickens, of course, too, they needed 50 pounds of feed, and you know, they need to be cared for. So there was that. And then I needed a gun. Right? I needed to learn how to shoot a gun. And I was a little anxious about having a gun, you know, because I was scared I might have to transport it someplace. And I'd never shot a gun before. I'd never been with guns. I'd seen them on other people's walls, of course. Okay, so well, I better get a license to carry conceal, because what if I have to go someplace and I have to take a gun and it's in the car? I don't want to just sit there and have people look at it. So, and I don't want to break the law, you know. So I got it, and I learned how to shoot a gun. So then I got a .22 rifle, and I got a handgun. And the only reason I wanted these was not to shoot him. If one of these poor animals gets mauled by something awful, which, you know, could happen, I may have to be the person who puts it out of its misery. Well, that has not happened, thankfully. But there was this raccoon that got into the chicken coop, and he would not leave. And I knew he would not leave. So there was only one alternative, because even if he did leave, he'd come back, right? Because he knew where the chickens were. He'd already found a couple, and I found their necks. So, oh well, I found their bodies without their heads. So at close range, you know, it's like, bang. And I did it. I said, okay, well, all right. So he called me. I thought that was interesting. I said, you know, I really think maybe it would be interesting to learn how to skin something. So I called my neighbor, who was born just around the corner on Cherry Creek, and said, I have this raccoon, and, you know, I don't know what to do with it exactly, but, you know, I kind of like to just understand the process. So we learned, he came over and he showed me how to do this. Well, it was good. So then I made a deal with my neighbor to get a pig. And I bought the pig, and I bought the feed, and they raised the pig. And then, when the time was right, the same guy who showed me how to skin got his son-in-law, and they put it up there. And I got over there, and there's 2 halves of it. And they said, which do you want? I said, okay, I'll take that one, because I was closer to it. So I learned how to dress a hog. I mean, okay, I learned how to dress a hog. All right, so there was that. And then I figured, okay, I had these chickens. You know, I might be interested to know what to do with a chicken. So I learned how to process chickens. So I learned all this stuff in just 5 years. I mean, things I never thought I would ever confront, ever thought about, never even considered. And I just kind of don't believe I did that, but golly, I'm still doing it. And who knows what I'm going to do next.
So, can't believe I did, well, actually, I believe I did that. If I'd asked my parents or them at the time, they were the ones that couldn't believe I would have done that. But now in retrospect, it's all, if you're looking for stories like that, you just have to go back to the hitchhiking days. Hitchhiking always comes up with good, can't believe I did that sort of adventures. So this goes back to the days of, I guess it would have been sophomore year in college, and spring break always came along, and when you're going to school in Minnesota, you head for someplace, California, right? That's where you go for a spring break, and in a week, there and back is no big deal. In those days, of course, there was student standby half-price tickets that you could go, so I knew I had enough money always for one. I usually got my tax return just about that time, so I had the money for that one, but going out was usually hitchhiking. And from St. Paul, Minnesota, and this time I was headed out to LA. I'd been out to LA the year before, and I'd met this girl on Santa Monica Beach, lived in Pasadena, and she had invited me back that next spring. So I thought, well, that's a good destination to start. And then after that, I got a friend in Tempe, Arizona. I could go visit him, and I'll pick up the flight home from there. So I had a ride arranged to Salt Lake City. Okay, that was the destination. Those people were going on to Oregon. So there I was. I got there at night. And, these are the days of kind of low budget. I mean, middle-class suburban kids could still get out of college debt-free, but, you had to sort of really, frugality was the name of the game in those days. And so, but, life had been pretty much, I guess I've always lived this kind of life where I don't look for trouble, and trouble doesn't come to me, and I've never been a victim of crime or violence in my life, and I've already lived 67 years, so I don't know, I've just lived with that kind of attitude. And so Salt Lake City, I said, okay, now how am I going to get to LA? I got there at night. Certainly, you don't stay in a motel, and I didn't know where any youth hostels were. And I thought, well, I'm willing to spend $5 at the Greyhound bus station. I got dropped off there, and I just went there and says, where's $5 going to take me? And so, you'd think, well, it'd take you sort of far. I mean, in 1971, it'd take you some. Well, it took me to, I think it was Fillmore, Utah. And I got off at some just sort of, at the local little general store, liquor store, whatever combination, and said, it's still pretty dark out there. I guess, I don't know if I really want to kind of continue on. And so I sort of climbed out of town a little bit and off on the highway and sort of lay low in the ditch until it got to be light. And but somehow, while I was laying low in the ditch, but maybe not low enough, this car comes by and then turns around, and the headlights are shining back in my face. And I kind of go, and someone gets out of the car, and I'm just kind of going, okay. And this is just sort of what it was here. It was, kind of the suburban boy. A tall African-American man comes up to me and looks at me and says, you better get in before the cops come. And I go, okay. That sounds like a reasonable thing to do. So I sort of go, I said, and in this little adventure of hitchhiking I walked into a world, and how far are you going? Well, they're going to LA. And so that's still about a good 10 hours drive, I'd say, and, off and on interstate highways, back highways. And in this car, I wasn't the only one in there. There was a young woman in the front seat with him. She was about 18, and I, bit by bit, sort of did my little nice, polite suburban boy interviewing of who's who and what's what. And there was in the back seat was another woman there who had a little baby, a few months old baby. And bit by bit, in the next 10 hours, I kind of got their stories. And I don't remember names at all, but I remember faces and I remember feelings. And it was just a sense of camaraderie. We were just on a little journey together to LA, and each in different ways and different purposes. The man who was driving the car had originated in North Carolina, and I don't exactly remember his story. I know it wasn't his car. That much I remember. But it was an uncle's car or somebody, but he was a good driver. So, and the woman in the front seat with him, she was about 18 or so, and she was from south side of Chicago and was just kind of looking to get out of there. And so she had been his first passenger. And the other woman in the back seat was, she was maybe middle-aged at that time with the little baby, and she was off on a journey. The baby's father was in jail, but she had read a book about someone in LA who was going to help people, was one of these self-help gurus, and she was going to find this guy because he was going to help get her life straightened out. And so in the course of this, daylight, came on, and we were going down to St. George, Utah, and down through, and we stopped in Las Vegas. And I had a function too, because I was sort of the respectable suburban boy, and so this little baby needed food warmed up, and so we'd go in and order the one Coke to go, and I'd say, by the way, I've got a little baby out in the car, could you mind heating up this food? And I was the guy that sort of, could kind of get that without having any raised eyebrows, So we all had sort of a little function on this little trip together, and sure enough, got dropped off someplace, I don't know, Rosemead Boulevard exit, going in on the San Bernardino Freeway going into LA, and there was just a short hitchhike up to, Rancho something road in Pasadena, and my little heartthrob from the year before, they took me in, and I stayed there a few days until her parents announced that at some point they needed to go out of town for the weekend, and it was time for me to go too. So I said, okay, well, here's my next hitchhike, heading out to Phoenix, Arizona, and I remember there was some sandstorm on that one, but I guess looking back now, I can't believe I did that, but it's kind of a good story. So it's a good memory. Okay.
I'm a potter, and I was doing some craft work for an organization that needed me to be certified by the sheriff. So I go in there. This isn't Floyd here, and this was the old sheriff. And he tries to get my fingerprints, and he can hardly get them because the clay I work with keeps your fingerprints off, So finally he gets it, and he looks it up. He says, "What? You're on the FBI list?" And I'd forgotten. I said, "Oh, really? When?" And then I sort of remembered. Said, "Oh, this was 1960, I think 7 or something." "Oh, that's right, because I was on a march against the Pentagon way back then. And they arrested us all, and it was no big deal. It was all just a march and everything." But again, that's part of the time that maybe kind of leads to this story. I was going to Cornell back to 65, 69, so I decided to tell this story. I didn't have any plans. I got inspired thinking about California. Back then, Ithaca was called the Berkeley of the East because we were experimenting with everything. And I graduated in 69, so this is my 50th anniversary of graduating from college. And of course, we had to all do our California dreaming. And a bunch of us got in an old funky car and started, after graduation, heading to California. I'd never been west of Western New York. That I grew up in Connecticut, in upstate New York, so that was an adventure. And so we start heading west. And I will have to confess too that back in that last year, 68, 69, we did our experimentations with different things, like little pot here and there, and little LSD here and there. But not often, and I did learn, again, we were all experimenting, that they started putting some really, actuals, called it speed back then, in the LSD. And I had one, like, okay, no more. And then somebody said, oh, what you need is the good Owsley acid. That was the term they used back in that day for the nice stuff. And I'll have to admit, the nice stuff did open up my right brain and may have been what led me to be more of a potter than I was the science educator I was supposed to be. Anyways, we all head to California, land in Berkeley, and I had no money. Of course, none of us did. And I find a job at a local fabric store there on Telegraph Ave. And that was fun because I made clothes, little peasant blouses and gathered skirts for the hippie clothes of the day, and sold them at a little shop. And then so that was kind of fun exploring California at that time. And then this young man comes in and he's needing a job, and he gets a job. He works with the stock, for the fabric stock I called him the stock boy from Stockbridge because I learned he's come from Stockbridge, Massachusetts. Turns out he was a friend of Arlo Guthrie's, so when he came and played out in San Francisco, he took me and introduced me to backstage. So again, it was part of a whole world. And then the big concert of the Altamont concert is announced. It's going to happen. And I was not into the Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger was a blech as far as I was concerned. But Crosby, Stills, and Nash were going to play, and they were my heroes. And Simon and Garfunkel too, which they were my heroes too. So by then I had tried one little bit of the Owsley acid out there, and it was pretty nice, not too heavy. Well, the young boy from Stockbridge, he had never done a trip, so I thought he and a few other of us were going to get together and go to this concert. And I said, oh, this would be a great time to have your first trip, because it is fun to go to music concerts when you're a little spaced out like that. And so I gave it to him, and a few of us, and I took mine. And it had been a while since I had done that. And so we're there, and we're kind of, everything's really cool, but then things start going weird. And the thing about when you're doing a little bit of that acid trip stuff, when things go a little off, you really pick up on it. And it starts to really, your perception of things is, I don't know, it's an interesting exploration, and it would be nice to know a little bit more about what's really going on in the brain. But I was starting to feel like, wait a minute, something's not right here. And there were arguments going on stage, there were things going on with the sound system, there was all this kind of stuff, and it just had a weird vibe to it. And I was starting to feel a little uncomfortable, and then I think it was either Dave Crosby or Stephen Stills that got up on stage and said, if you've got it together, leave. And I knew that was the message. So I said to the other kids around me, we got to go, because again, I knew that this young man, Stockbridge from Stockboy, I didn't want his trip to go bad. So I said, okay, we got to go. We start to head out. We're starting to cross a big open space where there was the sound of helicopters, but we ignored them. And there's, of course, the Hells Angels were the ones that were running the show, and that was the big problem too. And they're yelling and screaming at us, like, get out of here, and we run across the lawn. It turns out the Rolling Stones were just landing in their helicopters. And I was glad to get out of there. We get home, and we turn on the radio, and that's when we learned that someone had gotten shot on stage, and the whole thing had just fallen apart. And I can't believe I even did it, because it was really, to me, what it was the end of an era. And for me, that was it. I did no more of the LSD stuff. I did no more, maybe a little bit of the light leaf pot once in a while, but not the heavy stuff they have today. And then got into hiking in the Northern Rockies, and that literally changed my life in many ways. And that's part of the story of how I even got here. But yeah, that's my not believe I did that one. Thank you.
Sometimes you have to get out from behind the camera. So, when I was in college, I met this guy who just was an artist, and he was very mysterious, and he was part of the German club, and it was really cool. And I really liked him. And so I signed up for German. And I went for full immersion because I needed to learn fast. So I did really well, and he signed up for a year abroad, and I decided I could go there. So I got really serious and started going to Stammtisch and, just speaking German as much as I barely could. And I found a job, and I figured out I could graduate early, and so I became an au pair, and I went to Germany. And so I was supposed to graduate in May, but I went to Germany on December 28th because I was done with college. And it was in this little town called Heideck was the family, and it was about an hour and a half from where David, the skinny German loving guy, lived. we were going to visit each other on the weekends, and we had written letters. That was the days of like romantic letters and like $200 phone bills. And so then I landed, and I went to his place in Bamberg, his little dorm room. And he was like eating soup out of a can and like drawing with charcoal and being artistic. And he broke up with me. And I'm like, what the heck am I doing here? And I sat there for a minute. I was like, okay, so I guess I got to become fluent in German. And I called my host family and I asked them to come pick me up, and it was like New Year's, there was New Year's parties. That actually was New Year's Eve that time. So they picked me up New Year's Eve, but they had to leave, so they left me at home. And it was like turned midnight, and I'm like, it's midnight, I'm in Germany, I'm broken up with, I'm gonna take a walk. And I walked down the street, and in Germany on New Year's Eve, they shoot off fireworks everywhere, right? I thought I was gonna get killed. It was like a war zone. So I'm like broken up with in German. I don't speak German, but I think I'm gonna be okay. And then I'm gonna get shot with fireworks. And then I go home and call my mom. And she's so worried about me. And what are you gonna do? And I'm just like, I'm here. So I'm this au pair for these kids who don't need an au pair. They're like teenagers. And their mom was really tight. Like, I know all Germans aren't this way. I married a German man, and I know it's not always this way, but there is a stereotype that they're very uptight with their cleaning. And this woman really followed that stereotype. And so, like, one time she even criticized my mom, which made me mad. She's like, your mom didn't teach you how to move the toaster, like, to wipe the counter? And I was like, well, okay, so there's like crumbs, and every day I had to clean the bathtub, and so basically they didn't need an au pair, they needed a cleaning lady, but it's cheaper to hire an au pair. And so I cleaned every morning. I had chores, and then I had to go to town and buy bread for lunch, and they all come home for lunch, and I had to set the table and do all these things, and hardly did anything with the kids. And I got a pass to ride the train to Nuremberg, which was the closest city, and I sat in a coffee shop. Every day I would drive like 2 hours on the train just to go sit in this coffee shop to get away. And I made a couple friends. Like this one guy said he was a professor, but he was sort of strange. But he was the only person I knew, and he was nice to me. And anyway, so I go back home and keep working, cleaning the house. And my friend Laurel, who I knew from Flat Rock Playhouse in Hendersonville, North Carolina, happened to be living in France at the time. So we had like visited each other, and she was visiting me, and it was like a couple months into my stay there. Oh, I forgot, I had my wisdom teeth out, and the woman that was the mom, she made me get them out because I had a little bit of pain. She was like, oh, they got to come out. So, but then she was going to deduct that from my pay, and the husband was pretty nice, and he said, don't worry about your teeth. Don't worry about it. I said, okay, so don't tell Uta, but don't worry about it. I said, okay. So then Laura was in the bedroom, and I was upstairs getting us some snack at nighttime. Everyone was in bed. And Gunther, the father, was out, and he gave me a good night hug, and then he kissed my neck. And I said, oh. So I went down to the bedroom, and I slammed like this. I can still remember. I looked at Laura, I said, we got to get out of here. So we started packing my stuff up, and we got half of my stuff packed up, and the next day we did all the chores, and we like went to the train and put all my stuff, half of my stuff on the train and stored it in the locker in Nuremberg. And then went back the next day, did all the rest of the chores, got the rest of my stuff, and I wrote this letter, and I was like, you don't really need an au pair, you need a cleaning lady. And as for my teeth, ask Gunther. And we got the rest of the stuff, and we were like sneaking around these old historic, alleyways, making sure they're not going to see us. And we got to Nuremberg and put the rest of our stuff in the train. And then I stayed with that weird guy at the coffee shop who also turned out to be kind of... So I can't believe I did all that.
Weird story this time, so I don't know how it's going to go at all. I'm wearing my English jeans today. I didn't realize how tight they were until I used the restroom. So that's funny. All right, so things that something that I can't believe I did. People that have heard me talk before. I came from Arizona. I'm from Phoenix, and the way that Christy and I ended up out here was she's from northern Indiana, and she had moved down with her sister, and we met there, and fell in love early and all that stuff. But she was still my girlfriend at the time, and during that time, the housing market was doing very well. It was the housing bubble, and especially in places like Arizona and Florida, it was ridiculous. And both her and I were, she and I were homeowners, and I was working at a place that it was a startup that got acquired. It was a little insight, I usually tell car stories and stuff, but the way that I make my living has always been as a computer guy. Not as cool as the car stuff. Kind of a nerd, but I was a storage administrator for a SAP outsourcing company. It was before cloud was cloud, and we were some of the first cloud guys. Again, it's not that interesting or that cool, but she was ready to leave Phoenix. I never lived anywhere else. I was willing to take a chance and do something different. I've always been a guy that's, ready to do something at any point, and screw it, let's see what happens. So I was working at this place. I wasn't very happy at this job. This whole story is gonna make me seem like an awful person, so I'll just get ready for that. But I got this job. I worked with this lady. She was about 5'2", white hair, sweetest sounding voice, smallest little cutest old lady, grandma, and I could not stand her at all. She was, she didn't know what she was doing. I was brought on because I actually did know what I was doing. I was one of the early guys that did this kind of work. And she and I butted heads from the beginning. And again, it's just so tough. It's like this sweet little, her name was Sue, which has made it even worse. And when I meet Sue, this is a sweet little lady named Sue. But Sue and I butted heads constantly. I couldn't stand Sue, and she was just awful. And it got to a level that our boss, I forget, he had an odd name too, but decided he was going to make one of us the senior storage architect of blah, 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 blah. So she got the job as the senior, and now I'm stuck with someone that has no idea what they're doing, that's now able to tell me to do the wrong thing, regardless of whether I think it's the right thing to do or not. But at this time, Christy's like, well, let's leave. I was a rebellious IT guy. I thought I was pretty hardcore. I rode a motorcycle to work, this hardtail chopper. I thought I was pretty hardcore and like, tough guy, ready, but not really at all. So that went on for a while. Christy was ready to go. I put my house on the market. She put her house on the market. Her house sold for an obnoxious amount of money. My house sold. It was the strangest thing. My realtor said, well, just think of the craziest number that you can, and within 4 hours, that's what I got. It was, obviously things aren't like that anymore. So I go into work after hearing that my house is sold, and sit down. At this point, I'm not really doing much anymore. I'm just kind of ready to leave and go to North Carolina at the time. And so Sue turns around, and I'm on the internet looking at, back then, I don't even know what I was looking at, like MSN.com or something like that. And Sue turns around to me and says, in the sweetest little voice, she goes, Brandon, are you going to do any work today? And I don't know if it was the pitch or something, but I just had this moment where I lost my mind, completely lost my mind, and I turned around, and I'll save all the swear words because it's being videotaped, but I said something to the effect of, "No, you effing troll, I'm not going to do anything today, and if you don't shut your effing mouth, then blah, blah, blah." And then I like released the rest of my breath and sat there and like, uh-oh, that was not good. So I walked out to the break room, and they had a little outdoor area, and I sat there and kind of took a breath and went like, wow, that was bad. That was really bad. What got into me? It was like yeah. Anyway, so I came back, I sat back down. My boss, I remember his name now, was Dow. He had a Panzer, like those big military vehicles. That was what he was into. But he walks down there. Yeah, it was odd. And he said, "Brandon, we need to have a talk." I'm like, all right, well. So I walked into this conference room, and Dow has walked me in there, and Sue's sitting there. And Dow said, "Brandon, do you have a problem with Sue?" And then it clicked again, and like there was something that he said that just made me lose my mind. And I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do have a problem with Sue, and I have a problem with you too, with you bringing me in here and and then the swear words just exited my mouth, and they just wouldn't stop, and it was like, F you, F you, F you, F you. You're cool, F you, I'm out." And I walked out of the conference room and sat back down at my desk again, which that makes any sense. I sat down, I'm like, and then it finally, like everything started to make, like dawn on me what just happened. So I walked over to the CEO's office, and I stuck my head in there, and I was like, all right, I'm out of here, just so you know. I think I'm done. And he said, "Well, I didn't think you were going to leave, and you were selling your house and everything." "Yeah, well, I think I'm gone." And then I got out, and I did the gnarliest burnout on my chopper all the way out. It's the second time I've done that, quitting a job and doing a burnout. It's actually the only 2 times I've quit a job, and both times I did a burnout. So if you ever I think that's what you do. But I did like the gnarliest burnout and left there, and then we moved to North Carolina, and I eventually got a job, and everything worked out great. But it's funny, last night when I was talking to Barbara about this, and I didn't really have a story because the theme was, I can't believe I did that. The only thing that I can't believe is that I'm still here, and this all ended up this way, but everything else is pretty believable, so that's it, yeah.